After the battles of Lexington and Concord, the British forces are bottled up in Boston. And in an arc from Cambridge to Roxbury, there are 15,000 to 20,000 colonial militia troops camped out, holding the British in Boston. This is the Siege of Boston. In the wake of this, Congress meets in Philadelphia, and Congress has to decide what to do about this army, these militia troops. The New England states are very much interested in having someone else pay these troops. And Congress also knows they need to have some central authority here rather than having the New Hampshire militia, the Massachusetts militia, the Connecticut and Rhode Island militias all camped out here. No one will listen to orders from another one. No one is sure how to pay them. And in fact, the troops are paid differently. Massachusetts troops get paid by the lunar month. Everyone else gets paid by the calendar month, which means if you're from Massachusetts, you get paid when there's a full moon. If you're a troop from another state, you say, well, wait a minute, why are those guys getting paid? No discipline here, no organization. Congress has to decide what to do about this. John Adams says, as Congress is beginning its debates about the Army, before we decide how to organize the Army, we should also decide who should command it. And I have someone in mind. Someone who has a large fortune, he is already committed to the cause. Someone who has military experience, and someone well known and beloved by all. As he is saying this, John Hancock is sitting up taller in the presiding officer's chair. About whom else could Adams be speaking than John Hancock, who does have a large fortune. He is committed to the cause. He also has military experience as commander of the Boston Corps of Cadets. And of course, he is well known and beloved by all. Adams sees this, and Adams is greatly amused. Out of his other eye, he sees Colonel Washington from the Virginia militia. Washington had come to Congress wearing his uniform. Washington also senses Adams might be talking about me, and Washington gets up and leaves the room. And then Adams says, the man I have in mind is George Washington of Virginia. And with that, Hancock's face changes. He glowers at Adams and never quite forgives him. Washington, for his part, leaves the room and tells a friend, you may mark this day as the end of my reputation. Washington had an extraordinary task to organize this rabble into a fighting force. And he found all of these problems. Men wouldn't listen to their officers. In fact, men elected their officers. And officers aren't going to discipline men who elected them to a position of leadership. You can't switch men from one regiment to another. Washington can't even find out how many men he has under his command. One of the first orders he gives is, tell me how many men we have. And it's weeks go by, one excuse after another. Well, we'll count them tomorrow. Well, some men weren't here. We can't quite figure out how many men there are. Washington is beginning to sense he's gotten himself into a disaster. Things get even worse. He's taken as his headquarters the former Vassal Mansion in Cambridge, home of a loyalist. It's now the Longfellow House in Cambridge. And one day, someone brings Washington a bit of information. You know, when you arrived, we said we had 300 barrels of gunpowder. Well, we forgot to discount what we had used at Bunker Hill. We have about 30 barrels, General. That's enough for each man to fire 9 rounds. Washington had a very hot temper, and most of his life he spent getting it under control. And we know that on this particular occasion, he calmly sent everyone out of the room, except for his secretary, Joseph Reed, closed the door, and then he exploded with a torrent of language no one knew that Washington knew. This was a disaster, a looming disaster for Washington. There are some bright spots. On his first day or so in Cambridge, he comes across the river to inspect the lines here in Roxbury. And he comes up to Fort Hill in Roxbury, and he sees the fortifications here that were designed by Henry Knox. Knox was a 24-year-old who ran a bookstore in Boston, studied military strategy. And Knox, though he was not in the military at this time, designed fortifications here, and Washington was impressed with how well constructed they were and how well designed. He meets Knox and immediately makes Knox one of his inner circle. The other officer he meets here in Roxbury is Nathaniel Green from Rhode Island. And what impressed Washington about Greene's unit was how clean it was. These men knew how to dig latrines. In Cambridge, they didn't dig latrines at all. They used wherever they could find to relieve themselves. It was filthy. But here in Roxbury, Nathaniel Green and his men from Rhode Island really had good latrines, an orderly camp, and Green becomes another of Washington's inner circle. In fact, at the end of the Revolutionary War, there are only 3 general officers who had been in service since the Siege of Boston in 1775. George Washington, Henry Knox, Nathaniel Green, all of whom met first here in Roxbury at the Highlands.